So we're going to get started. We're going to do questions from 5.3 during this first session. And we may spend the entire first session on these questions. So we're going to take our time. We're not going to rush through them. Let me turn on the camera here. And then we'll get started with your questions. And we'll start with, I believe Cecil put a question on there. Number 3, I think is what it said. Yeah, so let's start with Cecil's question number 3, and then we'll jump to number 10. I know I basically showed you how to do the first several questions, apparently up to number 10. So we will definitely do a few from 10 on, okay? So, but Cecil asked about number 3. Let's look at that one first. And Cecil, would you like for me to do an example, or would you like for me to do the question you had?
Could you do an example?
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
Sure. So this one says on number 3, sorry, I'm looking at number 1. Let me go to the question you actually asked. Number 3, it says, use the table of cumulative areas under the normal curve. And by the way, what they mean by that, the table we're using is the table of cumulative areas. Cumulative just means area to the left. So that's what we're using, just to let you know. Don't let the words throw you. We want to find the z-score. So I'm going to write down what the question is. The question is to find the z-score. That's the question. It corresponds to the given cumulative area. And it says if it's not in the table, use the closest one. And if it's exactly halfway, then use the z-score halfway. So the cumulative area they've given us, on mine, yours may be different. So I'm going to put given because this was given in the problem. The given cumulative area on mine looks like this. Let me remind you of a few things. First of all, that when they tell you cumulative area, they mean area to the left. Okay, so they've given us the area to the left. Now, the areas on the table are the numbers, those 4-digit decimal numbers in the body of the table. So this is not, doesn't look like all those areas. So to make it look like the areas, I'm going to put a 0 at the end, so it'll have 4 numbers, just like the ones in the table. Okay, now, the next thing, since they're asking me to find the z-score, that means I'm going to use the table backwards. What we've done up to this point, so in section 5.1 and 5.2, is we either knew the z-score or we knew a data value, and we were able to find the z-score, and then we found the area. This one's backwards. On this one, what we're given is the area, so this is the area to the left. And if I were to draw a picture of this, and I'm going to draw a picture, so I'm going to really talk about this to make sure everybody's got it straight how to use it backwards. Whenever you draw a picture, and I want you to draw a picture for every problem on your paper, okay, every problem, draw a picture. And I want you to write Z here. That's to remind you that this is a number line that has z-scores on it. Then draw your normal curve. This is the standard normal curve with a mean, median, and mode here at 0 and a standard deviation of 1. So what they're telling us is that the area is 0.048. Well, recall the area to the left of 0 is 0.5. This is less than 0.5, which means the area to the left is less than half, which means this has to be a negative z over here. So since that area is less than 0.5, that means it is a negative z. If it was greater than 0.5, we'd know it was a positive z. Now this is important because if you don't know if it's positive or negative, you don't know which page of the z table to look at. But now we know this is a negative z, so we're going to look at the table, and what we are looking for is this area. So we're going to look in the body of the table. So I'm going to pull up that z table. I need to get a better copy of that so that it's more visible, but I already have this one on here, so I'm going to use it. And I'm going to use the negative part of it. So this does look just like the one that I put in the Unit 3 folder in Blackboard under Lessons. So this is the negative z table, the negative side of it. Make sure you print off both pages. You need both pages. And where we're looking is at the areas. And the areas are, you know, these numbers, and here, those are the areas. We don't know the z-score. So I'm going to look for the area closest to 0.0480. 0.0480. And you have to be really careful on this part. This is the hardest part, is just finding the number that's closest. 0.0480. Oh, it's going to be in that gray area, so I'm going to look at my actual. Hopefully you have a printout of it so you can look at it. 0.0480. There's a 0.0485. That's a little too big. If you look, so right here, there's a 0.0485. That's a little too big. So what I want is I want to look at both of them. One, if that one's a little too big, I want to find the one beside it that's smaller than what I want. So that would be the one right to the right of it, 0.0475. And I'm going to write those two down. And I notice that those are both in the row for negative 1.6. I'm having trouble with my pen. And one of them is, and it's in those two columns. So I'm going to write those down. So remember, I'm looking for 0.0480, and the numbers I find, so when you do this type of problem, you're always going to look up two numbers. Find one. If it's not there exactly, if it's there exactly, then you're done. That's the z. You just figure out the z-score. But if it's not there exactly, you need to look up two. We're going to find the one that's a little too big. In this case, one that's a little bit too big is to the left. So I'm going to stop sharing this so you can see what I wrote in the board. So these are the two areas, and you notice what I'm looking for is 0.480. And I found a 0.485 and a 0.475. And I noticed this one's 5/10,000ths too big, and this one is 5/10,000ths too small. This number that we're looking for is exactly halfway. Now the z-scores for these, let me write down the z-scores, were negative negative 1.66. And this one was a z of negative 1.67. If one of those areas were closer, I would take the z-score for that one. But since 0.0480 is exactly halfway between those, what I'm going to do to get my answer is I'm going to average. So this area, let's write this down. If you, in your notes, you can put this. 0.0480 is exactly halfway. So we're going to average the two z-scores. So my work for this would look like this. So my z-score that I'm looking for is going to be the average of this one and this one. So I'm going to take the negative 1.66 plus negative 1.67 and divide by 2. That's going to give me negative 1.665. Now, I did that quickly because when you average two numbers, it gives you the halfway point. Basically, that just adds a 5 to the end of the smaller one. Okay, so I'm going to put that in. And you'll notice this one says round to 3 places as needed. So I'm going to put in negative 1.665. And that's the correct answer. So I'm going to give you a second to try that one on your own. It's quite possible that the area you're given on number 3 is also exactly halfway between. And by the way, you're not going to be able to practice on any of these unless you have that z-table printed out. So please get a printout of that z-table. You definitely won't be able to do the test without the z-table. While you're doing this problem, I'm going to check roll. And if you finish this problem already and you're ready to go on, jump to number 10 and look at number 10. That's the next one we're going to do. I'm going to check roll. Please raise your hand when I call your name. Ariana? Cecil? Diamond? Kendra? Christina? Mia? Stephanie Garza? And it looks like Kayla is joining back. So I'm going to wait a second and see if she gets back in. I certainly understand. Hey, Kayla, are you back in with us now?
Yeah, my computer froze. I had to restart.
No, I understand. I can tell it does. It shows, you know, that somebody's leaving and then they're trying to get back in. So I can tell when that happens, and I know it's often computer issues or internet issues, stuff like that. So, okay, thank you, everybody. You can put your hands down. And let's, did anybody have a question on this before I go on? Hopefully everybody got number 3 right. Let's see, Stephanie or Ariana, do you have a question, or did you just not put your hand down? Okay. Let's go on to number 10. Christina says that number 10 on are different, and I think she's probably right because I didn't get to those. So I'm going to do my number 10, and you guys watch me do it, and then I'll give you a minute to pull up your number 10 and try it, okay? So on my number 10, it says find the indicated z-scores shown in the graph. Right, so this is, they've given me a graph, so I'm going to draw the picture. They draw theirs much taller than I draw mine. They have a 0 here, and they have a Z right here. They have this shaded area. They have a Z here like this, And then they have a Z here like this. And then they also have arrows pointing in those two. This one says point 4671. And this one also says point 4671, which tells you that these two z-scores are opposites because they're the same distance from the mean. So they're the same distance. So whatever one of them is, the other one is the opposite. Now, I'm going to ask you some questions. Type the answers in the chat. You ready? Number 1, what is the total area under the curve? Christina says 1. That's correct. Yep. Question 2. What is the total area under the curve that they've given us? Like this part and this part. How can I get that total of the part that they shaded? What should I do to get the total area that they shaded under this curve? Like if you were going to show the work, what would you do? I just want these two. They gave me this area and this area. How do I get the total of those two areas? Add them. Right. Let's just add and see what that total area is that they've already given us. So when I say the total area shaded, this is the area shaded. So that's going to be 0.4671. And you can either multiply that by 2 or you can add it to the other area given. And that gives you 0.9342. Next question, and I think this is what, Christina, what you were getting at. Next question. If that's the total area shaded, did you find the total area that's not shaded? And this is where what use comes in, Christina. We know the total area under the curve is 1. The total area they shaded is 0.9342. So basically, we're looking for the complement of that. So what calculation should we do to find the total of this and this, the total of both of them? What would your work look like to show that area that's left? So right, Kayla. So I would do 1 minus 0.9342. And that gives me 0.0658. Now let me tell you where I'm headed, okay? So I'm asking you a lot of questions, and we can find the answers to these questions. But ultimately, what I need to figure out in order to find either of these z-scores is I need to figure out the area to the left of one of them so I can use the table. So let's write down what we need. What we need is the area to the left of one of the z-scores. That's what we need. We need the area to the left of one of the z-scores. Okay, well, you just told me the total of these two pink areas is this. Can you tell me, I'm going to color one of them a different color now. I'm going to color just one of them orange. Did you find that? If both of them together are this, how could I find just that? and you find just that one piece, remember this, everything is symmetric on this. So what would be the area of one, and I'm going to call these tails on either side. The area of one tail. How could I get that? What calculation could I do to get just the area in this one? And I know both of those areas add up to this. That gives me, Diamond, that gives me the, if you do that, no, that would give you, if you subtract one of these from one, you're going to get all the rest. But there is a way you can do it. I could look at what is the total area, and this would be another way to do it. You could take the total area to the left of 0 and subtract off of that, but it wouldn't be 1 if you did it that way. Okay? It wouldn't be 1. 0.5. That's one way you could do it, Christina. I could do 0.5 minus 0.4671. That's one way I could do it. Or I could come down here. I know the total area of both tails is 0.0658. What if I took that and I divided it in half? Now I should get the same answer for both of these. So in your calculator, I want you guys to try both of these. And whichever of these makes the most sense to you is fine. So we can either do 0.5 and subtract off 0.4671. And that gives me 0.0329. Now come back over here to what we did here. Over here, we found the total of the two tails was 0.0658 by subtracting all of this stuff from 1. So if that's both tails, if I divide that in half, it should give me the same answer. Let's see if it does. So take your calculator and see if 0.0658, if I divide that by 2, and yes, it gives me this. So now I know that that area right there is 0.0329. And so do you see there are two ways I could have gotten that? So I could use the whole curve, the area under the whole thing as 1, figure out what the total is of these two unshaded areas and divide that in half. Or I can take the area that's to the half, to the left, which is 0.5, and subtract off this, and that will leave this orange section here, that one tail. Either way, that little area there is 0.0329. Notice that that area is the area to the left of this z, which is going to be negative because it's to the left of 0. And remember, we already said that these two z-scores are opposites. All we have to do is figure out one, and we'll know both. So I'm going to look up this area. This now is the area to the left of the negative one, of the negative z-score we're looking for. So let's go to the negative side of the table. And so, interestingly, every z-score I've tried to look up so far, the area to the left has been in the gray part. Let's see if that's going to continue here. So I'm looking up, this is the negative side because I'm going to look up that negative z. I just determined the area to the left is 0.0329. 0.0, and I think it's in the gray also. Of course it is, because every problem I look up, the area to the left is in the gray. 0.0329, and actually that's in the table. It is, it's like right here. It's in the row for negative 1.8, and it's under this column here. It's under the 0.04 column, If you're looking at your table, look at negative at the row that says negative 1.8, and right here you should see 0.0329, which means I know that that z-score is negative 1.84. So this score here is, I looked it up, is negative 1.84, which means the positive one is positive 1.84. And when I put those in the table, it wants, since there's two of them, they want me to separate them with commas. It doesn't say that it cares what order you put them in, so probably either one. Oh, and I notice I have a plus or minus button. I'm going to see if it will let me put plus or minus on this. If it won't, then I'll let you know. So I think it's plus and minus 1.84. Let's see if it will give me. Yes, it counted that right. So I hit the plus or minus button, and it let me give an answer of plus and minus 1.84, and it counted that correct. Okay, I'm going to give you a minute to work on yours. Don't forget that the area to the left of the middle, that area is 0.5. The total area under the curve is 1. 0.5 and 0.5. And you're going to use that information to find, somehow you've got to figure out the area to the left of one of the z-scores to figure it out. In order to use the z-table, you either have to know a z-score to use it forwards, or you have to know the area to the left of a z-score to use it backwards. So we're using the table in two different ways. If we know a z-score, we can use it forwards and find the area to the left. If we know the area to the left, we can use it backwards and find the closest z-score. So while you're working on number 10, I know there are others that are different, and I'm going to find another one after number 10 for us to work together. I think the next one will work is number 12. If you have a question on this one, be sure to type in the chat or turn on your microphone and ask your question. So we want to make sure everybody can find the z-score, that you can figure out areas, and that you can find a z-score when you know the area to the left using the table. If you have it printed off the table, and if at all possible, go ahead and print that off. At least pull up a table. I don't know if the one I provided is going to be useful to you on a screen, you know, just pulling it up, because I think those numbers in the gray area are really hard to see. I will try. I have another z-table. I'll take a picture of this other one that I've got, and it may be a little easier for you to read, but you're going to need to use a straight edge on this one. There's also one in the textbook. I'm going to see if I can find the one in the textbook, find where it is, and I'll direct you to that to get a good z-table. Any questions on number 10? Christina, does that help on number 10? I know you were one of the ones that asked about that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Terrific. If you've done number 10, then go on to number 12. That's the next one we're going to do. Number 12. And if you haven't quite finished number 10, remember you can always go back to the recording and pause it or go through it as I talked about it so that you can do it later. So I'm going to erase this. We're going to go on to number 12. Man, this orange color doesn't want to erase. Okay. I have to put muscle into this. All right, number 12. It says, find the z-scores. So I'm going to write this question. Let me spell it right. I almost wrote find the z-scores. Find the z-scores. And here's what we're given. You might always, anytime you're doing a question, this kind of goes for all of math, is identify what are they asking you to find and what information have they given you. And then you want to try to use that given information and think about how can I use it to get the thing that they're asking. On this one, it says find the z-scores, and it says what I'm given is 82% of the distribution lies between negative z and positive z. This is very similar to what we just did. We are assuming that we're talking about the normal distribution, so they don't actually come out and say that, but if it's not, you can't do the problem. So I'm going to draw a picture. Always draw a picture. Remember how I want you to do that. I want you to draw the bottom and label it Z. To help you remember that only Z's go here and that 0 is in the middle. They want me to find the z-scores. And so they want both of them. So there's a negative z and a positive z. So I'll just put a negative z and a positive z. They're telling you that they're opposites. So, and they're asking me to find these. And those should look the same, guys. I didn't draw this very well. Since they're the same, so they should be hitting at the same point right there. Okay, since they're opposites, because everything's symmetric on a normal distribution. And so I have this, they want me to find these opposite z-scores, and what they're telling me is that 82% of the distribution lies between them. So what they're telling me is in between, that's this space right here, they're telling me 82% of the distribution in there. That means the area under the curve between them is 0.82. Now, if I tell you that this is very much like the one we just did, very much, how would you begin? If I'm going to find a z-score, I need the area to the left of one of them. How would you begin this problem? And there's a couple of correct ways, but I would like to know what's the first thing that occurs to you? What's the first thing you think of when you see this picture? By the way, if you don't draw the picture, you won't see it. So make sure you always draw a picture. What's the first thing you think of doing? Okay, you could do that. What will that give me? If I divide 0.82, if I divide that by 2, so that's 0.41, what have I just found, Christina, if I divide that in half? Would that mean I figured out what this area is right here? What each half of it is, right? So that means this is 0.41 and this is 0.41. Okay, so now it looks exactly like that last problem. So tell me, what would you do next, keeping in mind that if we're going to find a z-score with the table, we need the area to the left of one of them. So what would you do next? The area to the right. Okay, so wait. So we divided the 0.82 by 2. That gives us this area and this area. And now what would you do? You could subtract 0.82 from 1. Okay, that's another thing we could do. If we do 1 minus 0.82, what that's going to give us, it's going to give us the total of these two areas. So that's going to be 0.18. That gives you the total of the two tails. If that's the total of the two tails, what would be the, divide that by 2, okay? If I do 0.18 divided by 2, that will give me the area in each tail. And 0.18 divided by 2, I believe, is 0.09. So now I know that the area right here, this area here, is 0.09. Did anybody think of another way to find it? There is another way you found that. So we can subtract that total area from 1. That gives us the total area in both tails, and we divide that in half. Another thing you could have done that should give you the same answer is take this 0.41 that got right, subtract that from 0.5. But it should give you the same thing. So if you did 0.5 minus 0.41, you notice it also gives you 0.09. So there are two different ways you could have done it. We did it by finding the area of both tails and dividing it in half. But another way would be to take the whole area here, which would be 0.5, subtract off the 0.1. Either way, you will get this for the area to the left of this z-score. Now that I know the area to the left of that negative z, now that's area to the left of the negative z. Let's make it look like an area. So the area to the left of that negative z, 0.09, let's call it 0.09. Let's make it look like an area. The areas in our table have 4 digits. So I'm going to add 2 zeros on the end. It doesn't change it. And that's the number I'm looking for in the body of the table, and see which negative z has that area to the left. So what do you think? Think that area is going to be in the gray part? I tell you what, if every single one we do that has the area in the gray part, that's going to be just crazy. So I'm looking for a negative z, so I'm looking at page 1. And I'm trying to find the area as close as possible to 0,900. Oh, it's not finally one where it's not in the gray part. Like 0,900, it's not there exactly. So I'm looking for the one that's a little too big. Notice there's a 0.09. I'll use my red here. There's a 0.0901. That's a little too big. So I also want to look at the one that's a little too small, that's right beside it. So I don't want to go to the number on the left because that's even bigger. So I want to use this one here, 0.0885. So I'm looking at the negative 1.3 row, and those two are in that column. So let me write that down real quick. So what I was able to find I didn't find 0.0900, but I found 0.0901 and 0.0885. Always write down both of the numbers you found and then determine which one is closer. I think it's pretty obvious. If you look at that 900, 901 is closer than this, so I'm not going to use that one. So what I want is the z-score that goes with the 0.0901. So I look to the left and up, and that one was negative. The z-score was negative 1.34. It has that area to the left. So that's that one. Remember, they wanted both of them. There were two, they're opposites. So my answer is I want positive and negative 1.34. So this one was very much like number 10. I'm going to see if it'll let me put the plus or minus on this one. I love that plus or minus button. 1.34. Okay, and that's the correct answer. So hopefully that helps you see that those two are very much alike, and that will help you with that. Let's do one that's a little bit different. Let's go to, let's do number 14 together. So if you haven't quite finished number 12, then come back to this when you look over the recording so that you can see the work again. But number 10 and number 12 are almost the same problem, except they didn't separate the area for us on this one. So next one we're going to look at is number 14. And number 14 has two parts. So this may be the last question that we get through. Number 14 says, in a survey of women in a certain country, ages 20 to 29, the mean height, so I'm going to write down the mean height, so this is given. Let's make two columns, given and find. Okay? Given, the mean height is 63.2. with a standard deviation of 2.76 inches. It says, answer the following questions about the specified normal distribution. And there's an A and a B part. So let's write the A part first. A part says, find what height represents the 95th percentile. And this is one that I really wanted to go over with you. So make sure you take good notes on this. This is number 14. So I'm going to give you a second, make sure everybody's written this down. This is number 14. This is what I was given. And this is what it asked me to find. Now you may notice that they aren't asking me to find a z-score. It says find the height. The height is going to be a data value. That's going to be an x. If it wanted just the z-score, it would ask for z-score. And the other thing that they want us to find, it says the 90th percentile. Now that's the same thing as telling you the area to the left. So I'm going to say that question, let's push over here because that gives you information. So that means the area to the left of the z-score is 0.95. So that gave us information. And what we're really looking for is a data value. Now, there's a formula on your formula sheet for finding the data value. But we're going to start by finding the z-score. We know how to do that. So what we're going to do first is let's do first, say step 1, draw a picture and find the z-score. And that's going to be using the table backwards. Anytime you have area and you're looking for a z-score, you're using the table backwards. So I'm going to draw a picture here. I'm going to label this Z. So remember z-scores go here. I'm going to put 0 in the middle and draw a normal bell curve. Next, I'm going to put the given information. The only thing they told me is that they want the area to the left of the z-score to be 0.95. This is area. Let's make it look like area. Our areas have 4 decimal places. So let's make that 0.9500 because it is area. And when they give you a percentile, they're telling you the percent to the left, which means the area to the left. Okay? So, since that is bigger than half, that means it's going to be a positive z. So, since this number is greater than 0.5, that tells you it is a positive z. So I'm going to put the z over here somewhere. And for step 1, that's what we're going to try to find is that z-score. That's not going to be our final answer, but it's going to be the z-score for our final answer. So what I know now is that the area to the left, you could shade it, or I'm just going to put it on here, is 0.9500. I'm going to look up that area in the table. That is the area to the left. That's the number I'm going to look up. So when I do the 0.9500, if it's there exactly, terrific. But if it's not, I need to find the 2 numbers that are on either side. And this is going to be on our positive z. I'm going to look first to see if it's in the gray area or not. Because if it's in the gray area, it's kind of course, it's in the gray area. So if you're looking at the table, I'll go ahead and share the table. And we're going to look at the positive side of the table because the area is bigger than a half. And I'm looking for 0.9500. And you can't really see it on here because the numbers in the gray area are really hard to see. But I'll show you where it is. If you look down at 1.6, if you go to down to the 1.6 row under 0.04, you look at the 1.6 under 0.04, you'll see 0.9495, and right beside it you'll see 0.9505. So I'm going to write those 2 numbers down that I found that are on either side of it. So I was looking in the body of the table. 0.9500 was not there exactly, but there was a 0.9495 and a 0.9505. The z-scores for those for 0.9495 was 1.64. And the z with an area to the left of 0.9505 was 1.65. So I'm going to unshare this so you can see what I just wrote. So this was the area I wanted. The area to the left was 0.9500 because I was looking for the 95th percentile. That one wasn't in the table, but these two numbers were. And if you look at that, 495 and 505, the area we want is exactly halfway. So that means we're going to have to average these two z-scores. So since it's exactly halfway, so let's make a note here. It's exactly, if it was closer to 1, we'd take the closest one, but it's exactly halfway. So remember what that means is you're going to average the two z-scores. So my work for finding the z-score, I'm going to have to average 1.64 and 1.65, which will give me a z-score of 1.645. That's the z-score. Now, that's not my final answer. That's the z-score for my answer. Oops. Step 2. How do we find this data value? You're going to use a formula. To find the data value x. And let me see, I don't know if I have the formula sheet for test 3 in my shared files here. Let me see if I did. I did not. So I need to go and look up the formula sheet for test 3. And I will see if I can share that with you, and I can go over with you how I'm doing it as well. I'm going to see if it will let me share my screen. Hold on. So I'm going to Black Blabber it, and I'm going to look under Lessons, Unit 3, and I'm looking at the formula sheet for test 3. And then let me see if it will let me share my screen with you. And I need someone, could someone turn on your microphone and tell me whether or not you can see this? Hold on just a second. Can you tell me if you can see this?
It's still on the Blackboard page.
Okay, let me try something else. Yeah, it's still doing that. It's not sharing this. So hold on just a second. Okay, I will, and you guys can look for it too for the test 3 formula sheet. And it looks like, yeah, I'm going to have to download it. So just hold on a second. And I think I can do that. I figured it out. And I should be able to share it with you in just a second. Oops, it's upside down. I wonder what made it come upside down. That's crazy. It wasn't upside down when I opened it, I don't think. Let me see. Yeah, okay. I'm still trying. I'm going to try one more thing. The formula we want, by the way, is right here. It's formula number 1. But I want to try one more thing to see if I can get this to work, okay? I have a hard time giving up on stuff like this. So, ha! There we go. Whoops. Oh my gosh. Okay, there it is. Anyway, guys, it is the first formula on this, and I don't know why I can't get this to do what I want it to do. But it's formula 1 on the formula sheet, on the test 3 formula sheet. And I will write formula 1 up here on the board for you so that you can see it. And I don't know exactly why it's not showing up. So if you look at formula, I know I'm just talking to you and you probably can't see it, but the formula for find, it says transforming a z-score to a data value, and the formula you're given, I'm going to write it here and then I will go back to the camera. And I just wrote the formula down here. So after I find the z-score, I'm going to use this formula right there. So I'm going to come over here to the left where I have some space, and I'm going to use this formula to find the data value that they were asking for. Remember, at the very start of the question, we said that they were asking for the actual height, not the z-score, but an actual height. And so if I'm looking for an actual height, that means I'm looking for a data value. So I'm going to use this formula. And don't forget, they gave me mu and sigma up here. So I've got mu was 63.2 plus the z is that z we just found, 1.645. I'm going to erase some of this so that we'll have room. .645 times sigma, which was 2.76. And do that calculation in your calculator, and then you're going to round it the way it tells you to. So I'm doing 63.2 plus 1.645 times 2.76. And what that gave me was 67.7402. I'm going to look and see. I don't know what it told me to round to because I got kicked out of everything here. It says round to 2 decimal places as needed. And so to 2 places, that would be 67.74. And that would be my inches. And that would be my final number is 67.74. So let me explain. What we have found is the height that represents the 95th percentile. What that means is 95% of whatever this was, women of a certain age in a certain country are shorter than 67.74, and that would be inches. So this is the actual height. The z-score for the height was this. I had to find the z-score first using the area to the left, and then I used this formula to change a z-score to a data value. Now, this formula is the same formula that we were using for z. So our old z formula, just to remind you, and then we're going to take a break here. Our old z formula, remember, was the data value minus mu divided by sigma. That was the old z formula. What this is it's taken that formula and it's solved for x. That involves algebra. You don't have to do the algebra because I'm giving you this formula that's already solved for you. But if I wanted to get x by itself, I would multiply both sides by sigma. And then to get x by itself, I would add mu. And that's the same thing as this. So it's really the same formula we were using before. And you can use this formula if you want to and solve for x. That's going to involve algebra. But if you're not comfortable with the algebra, but you are okay with plugging numbers into a formula, then just use this formula. It's formula number 1 on the test 3 formula sheet. And that's the formula you're going to use to change a z-score to a data value. It's the opposite. It's just like doing backwards. Okay? So try that one during the break, and we will come back at noon. And I am going to go on to 5.4. But if you have more questions, we can do a question or two more from 5.3 on Monday if you want to. Try to do as much as you can. Also on Monday, we're going to do a learning catalytics quiz, I believe, and start and review for the test. I think that's what's happening on Monday. Yeah. So we're going to do a learning catalytics quiz on Monday, and we'll do it together in class like we did that last one. And then we'll also review for test 3. Test 3 will have 5.4 on it, which is a little bit different. So make sure you come back at noon so we can take notes on 5.4. And that's going to be the last new section. This test is only over 4 sections. So this is really doable. You have to practice and do the homework in order for it to be doable and not put off the homework until the day before you're going to take the test. Okay, so I'll see you back here at noon.